Hello and welcome back to Root River Rod Company's YouTube channel. My name is Philip and I will be showing you how to tie an articulated streamer called the Thrasher. This is the Eric Hurst original pattern. He is an Umpqua signature fly tyer and a guide out of southeastern United States. With a smaller back hook and a deer hair collar and a bigger front end, this fly has action that just drives fish crazy. Stick around and learn how to tie one yourself. In the vise, we have a size 4 Gamakatsu B10S, and we'll be using UTC 210 in color olive. We're going to start out dressing the hook, leaving about eye width on the shank, and we'll trim out the tag end. Next, we are going to tie in the tail, and for the tail we are going to be using some Schlappen feathers in Sculpin olive. Also for the tail, we will be using some Metz Graded Hackle, the Deceiver Pack, in Grizzly Tan, and also some Flashabou in Copper. I've selected 2 Schlappen feathers here, roughly the same size, and more importantly, the natural curve of the stem are opposites of each other. The one on my left hand curves to the left, and the one on my right hand curves to the right. If you notice, if I take this right one and I lay it straight out, that natural curvature makes the feather want to lay straight. Where if I lay the one with the left hand curvature out, you see how it droops? So this way I'm going to tie in this feather the opposite way so it lies straight. And so we're going to face the shiny parts of the feather inside, opposite sides of the hook, to get that tail to lay straight, and then to get the feathers, if you look on top, to splay out like a V. So starting off with this left side feather, we are going to face the shiny side towards the hook, and we're going to measure out about 2.5 hook lengths. So 1, 2, half. And we're going to preen the fibers forward or back to get our tie-in spot. And to help tie this Schlappen feather in and to keep it from rolling, instead of trying to tie it in on the shank of the hook, we're going to put it kind of on the top side of the hook and use the flat of the stem instead of the round. And we're going to wrap up. And to secure this feather even more, we're going to pull back and do a couple over wraps over that stem before trimming out. And if you want, you can trim out some of this cop fibers. Those cop fibers will help keep the feather from spinning on the shank of the hook. Okay. And we're going to bring back to our tying point. We're going to grab that right feather, measure out roughly the same, preen those forward, and tie in on the back side. So we're going to put that shiny side of the feather in, and we're going to alter our tie-off spot to keep the bump to a minimum. So we're going to take a few more wraps forward, pull it back, a couple wraps, trim out that tag, and we're just going to clean up some of this under. So now our tail has a V to it. And we're going to take our deceiver pack and we're going to size out 2 feathers the same size. And we're going to tie these in over top. So with these ones we want the shiny side out. And we're going to size this one so it's about, I don't know, ½ inch shorter from the ends. Bring those forward. Place it where we want it. Couple wraps. Forward. And then back. And take our other feather, rough in our tie-in spot. Now we're going to take 2 strands of Flashabou and tie it in the tail. We're going to half it over our thread. Tie this side back. Grab the 2, fold it over, and lock those in. And we're going to trim those just past the tail. Next, we're going to tie in our underbody, and we're going to use some UV polar chenille in copper UV. We're going to take a section and tie that in and move our thread forward. We're going to preen these fibers as we wrap. We're just going to tie it off. Oops. Brush out any trapped fibers. All right, for the spreader or the deer hair, we're going to use some Premo deer hair in Sculpin olive. We're going to grab a, I don't know, pencil width chunk or so. So we got a stack of deer hair about a pencil width. I comb out the underfur, and you can run it through the stacker, which I already have done. And then we want the tips to go past the, just past the rear of the hook. So we're going to do bring it back here. loose wrap, and then we're up. There we go. Take a couple wraps through. So that spun nice. We got a nice gap on the bottom here. We trimmed the butts. Some of the butts did flare down that way, so you could trim them up. But we're going to use that hook eye and kind of the same angle. Now that we have our deer hair spun and trimmed, we're going to put a veil of laser dubbing over it. And on this rear one, we're going to use olive and white on the bottom. So we'll do a veil of the olive over the top and the white on the bottom. So we're going to start off with the white. We're just going to grab a chunk like this, and we're going to preen those fibers so they're all going the same way. We're going to pull and spin and just keep pulling and spinning until you get all the fibers going the same way. So now that we have the fibers all preened and going the same way, we're going to take about the middle of it. We're going to do a little pinch underneath, loose wrap. Try not to catch any of those deer hair butts ends. And we're going to do 2 wraps and then pull and keep that tight. Now we're going to grab our olive and do the same thing on top of the hook shank. So here's our pinch of olive, and we're going to kind of grab the ends, pull, and then push them together, and then kind of rotate it 90. So now with the green laser dub aligned, we're going to spread this out a little bit more. Kind of take the middle and do 2 loose wraps right on top of the white ones. And we're going to hold that and tighten and pull. Now, taking our finger, we're going to kind of separate out the green and the white. And we're going to preen that back. We're going to sneak our thread forward. And we're going to wrap back and create a little head. Oops. Then we're going to finish this up with our whip finish tool and do 5 turns. 1, 2, 3. And trim out our thread. Now you can take your favorite comb and give this a brush. Some of those fibers will come out when you comb it. It's natural. So you're just going to tease this veil. And there it is, the rear section of a Thrasher. For the front section of a Thrasher, we are going to be using a Gamakatsu B10S in size 2. We will continue to use our UTC 210 in color olive. We're going to start off by dressing the hook and adding some Dumbell eyes. For eyes today, we are going to be using some blackened nickel in size medium. We're going to start off doing some X-wraps on top of the shank before spinning it over and doing some underovers, X-wraps, just to lock these in. We're going to use a little brush on super glue to reinforce those wraps and then to secure in the wire for the rear section. So we're going to take our thread, put a base down on the shank rearward, next we're going to take some intruder tail wire in orange copper and some Hareline 3D beads in brown to secure in the rear section of the hook. So we got our section of wire on top of the shank in that wet glue. We're going to secure that back. Next, I'm going to thread on 2 beads. In the rear section of the hook, making sure it's orientated correctly with our hook point down. Now I'm going to feed this end of the wire back through the beads and secure it next to the wire on top of the shank forward. And I'm going to bend it around and take a couple secure wraps before grabbing my wire cutter and trimming out this tag end. Now we're going to cover up the end of the wire, being careful not to break our thread. We're going to move this backwards. With our underbody tied in, next we're going to put in a deer hair spreader. Taking from our same Premo deer hide, we're going to take a roughly pencil width size of deer hair again, run it through the stacker, and brush out any of that under fur. Now we're going to want this one to cover up those beads. So we're going to tie it in, the loose wrap, followed by a tight wrap, and we're going to pull straight up. We're going to wrap a couple through, pulling straight up, and then preen those back and get in front as best you can. Okay, now we can trim those Trim those flush or tight. Kind of like a bullet head. With their deer hair spreader in and trimmed out, now we can add some more laser dubbing in white and olive. With our white fibers preened out, we're going to take a pinch and add it just below the deer hair with a couple of wraps, making sure it's aligned on bottom. Okay, with our green dub preened out, we're going to put that on top of the shank and do 2 loose wraps. Secure that down. Okay, next we're going to take our copper Flashabou and we're going to tie in 4 or 5 strands. Taking your Flashabou, we're going to half it over our thread and tie it in on top, pulling it back. And we're going to kind of thin it out and taper this by using our scissors at a steep angle. And we're just going to preen everything back and just secure it in while we take our UV copper chenille or UV chenille and copper UV, and we're going to tie that in, and we're going to take a couple more wraps. To just behind the eyes. And trim out your tag end. Next, we're going to take some Sili legs in pumpkin and tie those in on either side, right behind the eye. So we're going to take our 2 rubber legs, half it over, okay, and then we're gonna trim those to length. Now we're gonna tie in our last bit of deer hair. So we're gonna take another size, or another pencil size chunk, maybe a little bit more for this front part. And we're gonna tie these in right on top of the eyes and create like a little wedge head. And so we wanna 2 loose wraps, and with their fingers underneath on either side of the eyes, we want to pull down and keeping everything on top in between the eyes, and that creates a wedge. And then do a couple wraps to secure it. Taking our scissors, we're going to trim these side ones up with the eye. And then we're going to use the eye of the hook as a reference and just come in here create that wedge. With our head trimmed, we're going to add our last bit of laser dubbing and create a nice veil and a dubbing head. So we're going to take our white and we're going to preen some out, and we're going to pinch wrap it on the bottom side just behind the eyes. So we can loop up, go behind the eyes, under the fur, or the deer hair. Do 2 wraps, preen it back. And then a couple securing wraps. We're going to bring it in front of the eyes next. Okay, we're going to pull that dubbing back and create just a little bit of a thread head, securing that before we're going to do a 5-turn whip finish. And we're going to brush this out and do a little trim and complete this fly. 1, 2, 3. So now with your favorite comb, you're just gonna tease out this veil, and some of those fibers are gonna come out. With our head brushed out, now we can take our scissors and kind of trim it up, clear some of the dubbing out around from the eyes. If you get any stragglers of the wrong color going up or down, you can take those out too. And then also we're going to take some out of the belly, just so we don't get that hook gap, mess with that hook gap. Now you can just take your brush and there you go. We have a articulated thrasher. Thanks for following along.